Hi.
Hi, Madeleine. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
I'm kind of sad that this is our last week.
It is. Sadly, 4 of those have gone very quickly.
It's gone so quickly, and I've learned loads. I suddenly feel very passionate about looking after my hair.
Yeah. Well, I'll just introduce. We're live again with Madeleine Spencer, broadcaster and beauty journalist. And this evening, we're going to be talking a lot about how-tos, those tips that are going to help you do your hair better. Madeleine,
We are.
over to you.
So the first thing that we are going to be talking about is the 2 things that most people want from their hair. So most people want smoother or more voluminous hair.
Yes, it's a good distinction because most people fall into one of those 2 camps, either wanting more volume, so bigger hair, a fuller shape, or wanting looser hair, smoother hair, less volume as such. And the approaches to both are very different. But if you know how to get the best from your hair, you can make a huge difference to the amount of hair that you have, or to actually make your hair easier if you want to reduce the bulk of it. So I mean, if we talk about volume first, 3 key things that will affect that. Number 1 being the haircut.
Right.
Now, a lot of people struggle to get the style they want with their hair simply because the haircut's doing the opposite of what they want. And we've talked about this very common one-length A-line haircut, shorter at the back, getting longer at the front. That is designed to make the hair hang flatter and straighter. So anyone trying to get volume with a haircut like that is going to have to try much harder. So the haircut is a very important part of getting the style that you want.
So would you say layers are quite essential to getting volume?
Yes, the correct sort of layers, or even some graduation around the front here. So even something which allows the hair to open up away from the face rather than pulling down towards the face. Something as simple as that can correct the balance and move away from what otherwise tends to be a flat pyramid shape, too much at the bottom and too flat in this area here. So the haircut's very important. And then the second thing, of course, is products. So we have an amazing range of products nowadays that can take fine hair, make it twice as thick, take thick hair, make it smooth and loose.
How precisely does a product that makes your hair twice as thick work? What's it doing to the hair?
Okay, so in terms of volumizing product, you're working in 2 ways. You're working firstly to expand the hair shaft, to plump up the hair shaft, and also then you're working on the outside of the hair shaft to either put texture or grip or to thicken the outside of the hair shaft. And it's important to understand what you're trying to do to that particular hair, because no one's hair is the same all over their head, and no one's hair is the same at the roots as it is at the ends. So I think it's worth repeating a image I showed last week. If we look at this being an illustration of a hair shaft, where the fuller end is at the roots, this is fresh hair, it's thicker, the cuticles are laying flat. As it's aging, it's thinning down and the cuticles are starting to lift. So that comes across as being thinner, rougher, and less flexible. So in terms of wanting to get volume in your hair, you're going to approach this hair in a different way to this hair. So this hair here, it's not about pumping up the hair shaft because it's full, it's fresh and it's full. But it may be that if this hair is silky and floppy, then you want to put some texture on the surface.
Gotcha.
So, but at the same time, injecting flexibility as well. A lot of products that claim to make hair high and hard and whatever, they actually make the hair feel awful. Either crispy or sticky, and that's really not what you want from a product. You want any product to leave your hair feeling like beautiful, clean, healthy hair.
Totally.
So how you would approach that hair is different to how you would approach this hair here, where you want to make that fuller, but you also want to smooth down the surface here. So you don't want to smooth this down; it's already smooth. It's silky floppy. If you've got floppy roots, but you've got dry ends, you're going to approach each in a different way. And so
Right.
when we're dealing with that, we would use a couple of products to equalize the texture. We want to make this more textured and have grip, and we want this to be thicker but smoother, so that we're sort of equalizing that and building all of the hair shaft up as well.
So for someone who has
products.
Yeah, so for someone who has both of those kinds, so someone who has the kind of hair where at the roots it's let's say in good condition and at the ends it's damaged, or someone who has a full head of good quality healthy hair or full head of damaged hair, let's say, what are the 3 products you would recommend for each of those conditions that you carry?
So on the roots we would use Thicker Quicker. So this is
yes,
going to
I have that.
It's an amazing
I love
product.
that. It is amazing.
But it texturizes. Yeah. You wouldn't use this on dry, coarse ends. You don't want to put more texture into that hair. You want a smooth, dry, coarse hair. So this is where
Megan said, I love Thicker Quicker. None of that sticky, gritty feel, but with brilliant volume. I'm with you, Megan. Yeah, that's what I've noticed.
Absolutely. So on smooth, silky hair, sort of what they would call, fine to natural, or hair at the root where it's floppy, that will do wonders. But you wouldn't use that on dry ends. You would use something like the mousse, which will thicken as well, but the conditioners in here will smooth as well.
Gotcha.
So on the mid-lengths and ends, you're more likely to use this to smooth and thicken.
So it's almost like when they talk about sometimes in skincare, if you've got an oily T-zone, you'd use one product, and dry cheeks, you'd use another product. It's the same principle.
Absolutely.
So once again, we're going back to hair care and skincare.
It's targeting. And I think the skincare industry is far more advanced in terms of products, but also in public awareness, in that you need to target. So, products are the next key thing, and then styling techniques are a huge part of being able to get the very best from your hair. And
now, if you want to style your hair for maximum volume, but you also don't want to damage it, which I feel like is your DNA as a hairdresser.
Yes.
How do you do that? Because my abiding memory of having my hair made bigger is to get a round brush, have it sort of tortuously pulled out, and then maybe backcombed a bit. And the whole time the whole time someone's doing that, I'm thinking, and it's kind of, your hair is being damaged. So how do you do it without that damage?
Well, that's just awful. And to have to watch hairdressers do that is awful for me.
Yes.
If I'm seeing that, because a client should never be wincing every time they move the brush. The client shouldn't even feel them working on their hair. And that's very much to do with having the correct equipment, the good quality brushes. And I could talk about good quality brushes because we spent decades using them and actually designing them. And unfortunately, I have to say that probably 95% of the hairbrushes on the market, I wouldn't put anywhere near someone's hair, because they're probably designed by people that make floor brushes and clothes brushes, and they think that if you just put bristles around a piece of wood or plastic, it's a hairbrush. And
so what does a good hairbrush do? What's the distinction? What's the difference?
Well, there are different types for different things, but our classic round brush, our round bristle brush, which will be the mainstay of my styling work, do 98% of my work. It looks like a very simple brush, and that's actually not how they look new. That's probably 10 years old now, which actually is probably a record for me to have been able to keep hold of a brush before someone borrowed it permanently, because that tends to be what happens, because a worn-in brush is actually much more valuable than a brand new brush like this, because they get better once they're broken in a little bit. But the key things about these brushes are, and this is for a firm bristle for thicker hair, the key thing is the amount of bristles on the brush. The spacing of them is very important. You don't want to have too many, and you don't want to have too few. But also, I don't know if you can see clearly, they're at different lengths. There's a level at the tips, but there's also a level just shortly underneath that, and that level catches the hair. So the brush grips the hair, but not too much. Now, these brushes, they do take a little bit more skill to use properly, but you have such a greater range of control and possibility when you're using a good brush. And I think where they are difficult and people don't actually use them properly, the market came out with brushes like this and larger versions of this, which are, you'll get big versions, which have very, very few bristles and they're very short. So what that does is that it means that if you're not very competent with how you're blow drying, you're less likely to get that tangled in the hair.
Right.
But the corollary of that is that you won't get the hair as smooth. So if you're trying to blow dry wavy hair or frizzy hair smooth, you'll get it straight, but it will still be a bit frizzy.
Okay.
Because they're all too far apart. They're not really giving enough tension while you're drying, whereas a brush like this will grip the hair properly. And as long as you're holding it at the right angles, you're not going to get tangled. And I can elaborate on that if you would like. Because
I would actually, because this is something that I personally struggle with.
Well, when we teach our apprentices, we divide those key brush strokes into three, and there are three main ones.
Yeah.
And this is one of them we call dragging.
Right. I know that
and
one.
what you see is, and this is how most people blow dry their hair. The brush,
so that's literally taking a brush at the back and holding it back as you blow dry, right?
All around the hair. But what you're doing, you're actually pulling it at a tension where the hair will be dead straight. And the dryer is in front of the brush. It's just dragging the hair straight. So you're not actually putting any shape or styling into that. You're just getting it straight.
Gotcha.
That's fine if you want straight hair. But for most people, even if they want their hair to be straight, they also want some movement in it. So it looks straight, but it has body and volume. It has a bounce to it. And so
like healthy hair.
Yeah, like healthy hair. So this other brush stroke is called arcing, and you just put in an arc into the hair. So that may be just at the roots, or it may be through the whole body of the hair. It still appears straight, but that has a sense of vibrancy about it. It's not just straight, flat hair.
Yes.
And then for those that want to get the most volume out of your hair, it's important not to blow dry and draw so much of the natural body out of the hair that it just becomes limp and dies. And so to use a round brush, a little bit more like a roller, we call this wrapping.
Right.
So there's very little drawing the brush through the hair. It's much more about wrapping down. And what that does, it doesn't smooth the cuticle quite as much. So as much as people don't want their hair to be rough, I mean, that cuticle, when you're trying to get volume, if it's slightly expanded, if there are some shorter hairs that are a little bit wavy, you actually don't want to make all of those perfectly smooth. They're inside.
Oh, because it gives you
the body. They're giving you padding.
Right.
But if you can bend the hair, hair that has a bend takes up a lot more space than hair that's dead straight. That sort of hair takes up less space than that hair, which takes up less space than curly hair. And so it's using those judgments to decide what sort of look you want and know that you've got a repertoire of brush strokes. But in terms of using any brush, the key here is to actually put the brush in the right direction. And if you don't put it in the right direction, you won't get control, and you will either not get the best effect or you will get the brush caught. So when I say control, if someone's blow drying the front of their hair, there's generally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sections.
Right.
I was to take a section here, as section 1 there. Notice I'm taking an angle up here. And that's really because if you don't blend the sections perfectly here, if you have a straight back section and the sections don't blend, you're going to see daylight all the way through those two sections. By going up here, if you make a bit of a mistake in blending these, it doesn't matter, you won't see it.
Got it.
But the critical thing is that when you actually start to blow dry, that you lift the hair high enough that the brush sits on the root here. That's everything. Because then you have control of the roots here, and you can either put lift into them, or you can put just a very little lift into them and come back. But if you have the hair down here and put your brush in like that, you have no control of the first 4 inches.
Over the root.
And if you're trying to take wave out, this stays frizzy. You have no control here. And if you try and put control in, then you will actually get stuck. And that's where you give up.
What if, like me, you want more volume, you have relatively fine hair, but you have an awful lot of it? If I did 5 sections, I feel like my hair would, so this would be section 1.
Yeah.
And I feel like, would I want to put that into 2 sections to do that? So that it's
the side here.
Yeah.
The key thing is, don't take a section wider than the brush, and don't take a section thicker than the brush.
Got it.
And it will change for different hair, but you know, for us, the most important part is always the front. If you're going to spend time on your hair, don't exhaust yourself on the underneath here that no one's going to see, and then rush the important part.
Sure.
Save your energy for the most important. And for most people, you know, 1, 2, you may do 3 at the side, but for most people, 1, 2, 1 here, 1, 2, 5 sections on the front usually does it. You know, whatever you do on the back is something else. You would do some sections, but it's usually 5 sections here. Right. And again, if you're doing the front here, a lot of people have, you know, they write into us about frizzy hair at the root here. What do I do about the frizzy hair? What product should I use? And you know, and yes, you can use a product to deal with that after, but you should deal with it first in how you blow dry it. And you know, here's an illustration here of not getting proper brush positioning on the hairline, where it's very important, as opposed to getting good brush positioning. And that applies to the hairline and further back. So, you know, this is, it's just really about...
If there are little tiny bits,
the brush starts here, not back here, where you have no control of this. It's actually having control of that there and pointing the dryer in the same direction as the hair. So that everything.
So almost those gnarly short bits are pulled into the body, basically.
Exactly. When you use the hair dryer, if they're too small to reach the brush, you're using the hair dryer to just push them onto the brush, not crossing the hair dryer where those small pieces blow everywhere.
Gotcha.
So taking the time and thinking just through the blow dry means, number one, it's much quicker, because instead of fighting again and again on the same piece, you're prepared properly. It's very quick. I mean, it's very few strokes of the brush and it's done. Next one, done.
Yep.
And you know, blow drying shouldn't be a long, laborious job.
Yeah, certainly not. And once you've got the right products to prep it, I think it does also get quicker and easier, right?
It does, for sure.
Roxy Bex has said, and this is actually one of the things that I was talking about, Michael. Roxy has said, why do grey hairs seem to have a mind of their own? And I believe that she is speaking about the same thing I'm speaking about, which is if you have a few wiry greys, they tend to want to break away from the body of hair. And then you sometimes find like an antenna sticking up.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I'm afraid that's how some of them are. And it's not true for all of them. Because, you know, we have clients that are almost totally white, that have beautiful, soft, silky white hair that's stunning. But unfortunately, for a lot of people, there will be some of that white hair, and I have some under here at the front here. You know, it is wavy frizzy. That just happens to be how it is for some white hair. It's drier, it's frizzier, it's coarser.
Yeah, Roxy, I have exactly the same thing. So we're in the same boat. Right, before we move on to the fun questions, we're going to do the second category of hair, which is people who want smoother hair. So people who have lots of frizz and they want smoother hair. What are the cut products and techniques that people who want smoother hair need to know about?
Well, again, for smoother hair, it may be that you want to take out wave, so it's silky. Often it's a case that what these people are really after is hair that moves a little bit more. And sometimes if hair's very wavy and it's also cut one length so it's very thick, the waves and the body at the root tend to hold the hair stiff. So it doesn't have that fluidity that people like with smoother hair.
Yeah.
And so that's a different thing altogether, and that's about taking out body in places. And it may be that you need to make sure that the hair near the roots is well controlled to smooth it properly, so that the hair hangs loose.
Interesting.
So that hair is properly smooth, so that it actually then starts to swing.
Okay.
So taking body out of hair will be, either it's going to be, the dragging strokes or the arcing strokes. You're not going to be using that sort of stroke if you want to take body out of hair. Products like the magic oil here, this product is about making hair loose and more slippery.
Can you put that from root?
Body.
Can you put that from root to tip?
This is an amazing product which I actually never used myself until lockdown, where my hair has got longer. I always use the more thickening texturizing 10-second transformation. But everyone raves about this, and I actually started using it myself 2 or 3 months ago. It's amazing how it will just loosen and smooth, and suddenly the hair is it's moving. It is an amazing product, but that's probably the only product that is totally about smoothing, totally no body whatsoever. But other ones that also are a great help, which I also use, Lifesaver UV.
Yes.
It will smooth the cuticle down, smooth out wave while it's drying, so you reduce bulk but keep it smooth. But also, mousse as well. If you're talking about smoothing the cuticle so it doesn't feel and look frizzy, even though it says volumizing mousse, if someone's looking to have looser hair, we would still use this on the end.
Gotcha.
It has great smoothing conditioning properties. So it's not an exact science, but
in a
some
way,
of the products are very clearly in one camp or the other.
Yeah, and I know that they feel completely different, but actually, in essence, they both involve getting hair to good condition and helping it to be sort of naturally as kind of sheeny and glossy as possible, and then maybe adding in a bit of So ultimately, it kind of comes down to the same thing with slightly different angles.
Yeah, I mean, I've lived through and worked through those periods where people will put in gunge on their hair and gels and things that will just make hair feel awful, and also make it feel stiff and sticky and brittle, just to get an effect. And I never liked it then, and I certainly wouldn't want it now. And so all of our products are designed to make hair feel like great, healthy, natural hair.
And this is not something that's on the roster to talk about, as it were, but you're saying that just made me think of men with short hair who use that gel that's spiky and hard.
Do they still? I mean, I know it was a big fashion going back, but I would have hoped that.
I don't know, but what could men use from your range that would give them that separation, but not the crunch?
Our 10-second transformation. This one here is what I use as well, and that's just an amazing product for short. If we would use it on longer hair as well, it's the one that takes the most sort of skill, let's say, to use. And if people don't pay attention and spend the time, it doesn't work for them. Because most people think, it's okay, it's a finishing product, I'll stick my finger in, take too much, not take the time to spread it, put it straight on the hair and think, well, that doesn't look very good. Well, it won't. You do need to follow the instructions.
Okay.
It's an amazing product. And
so that's the one if you want bitty ends, effectively.
Yeah, to break the hair up, also to feed it so that the hair feels supple and has a shine. That's the one to give texture.
Yeah, so this is one you need to follow the instructions on. Okay, we're going to go to some sort of more fun questions. Well, just a few to end, really. After 4 weeks of chatting and of mining your knowledge, I feel like let's do something where you get to slightly cut loose. So the first question is, if you could make over anyone's hair, dead or alive, who would it be and what would you do? And I've got some specific people, but I wondered if there's no one, fine. But if there's someone where you just think, oh, I wouldn't mind doing this.
I used to think, going back many years, I'd see Margaret Thatcher's hair and think, God, if only we would just sort her hair out, it's just not the best for her. But then, looking back now, for those that are dead, you think, well, of course you wouldn't interfere with that. Whatever you thought about it, it's iconic. It's part of their personality. It would look a bit silly to go back and put something else on them. But for people alive, I think it's different.
But if in theory, so I've got 4 other people I'm going to ask you about, but if in theory, Margaret Thatcher walked in and said, look, I want to look different, I want to look modern and snappy, what would you have done to her? What do you think would have suited her?
I would have gone for something that required a little less hairspray, and also was less roller set looking, so that had a less fixed, rigid nature about it, which may have softened her personality a little. Who knows?
Yeah, you never know. Okay, then, well, actually, let's do the next one, Boris Johnson, because Yvonne has just said Boris Johnson needs your help. Boris Johnson's on my list, Yvonne. What would you do to Boris Johnson?
Well, I think Boris Johnson's one that we certainly could do something with. And I have commented before in some of the media about his hair, and particularly when he went for that meeting in Europe in December, and someone, I don't know who, attacked it with a very small pudding bowl. And I mean, I don't know if it was reverse psychology of turning up, appearing not to have tried too hard, but I think some of his looks you can get away with when you're a bit younger. It's all a little bit unpredictable and a bit fun. But as you get a bit older, you do need to put a little bit more work into looks that even are still a bit spontaneous looking. There's a lot of work that goes in behind them. And so I'd say certainly for his hair, it shows that you need very, very precise layering so as not to get those hacked in steps. And I don't think he does have easy hair looking at it, but it calls for much more precise work. And I don't think he suits very, very short hair. I think his
I was going to say, would you take it short? No.
Longer. It looks like the sort of hair that when it's too short, it goes very blunt and loses its bend. And that's why you see his looks where it's very savage looking. I think it works better.
Do you think if he slicked it back with like a kind of...
Maybe. Yeah. But I think with the right precise haircut, it would actually contain the look within a structure. And within that, it could be quite random and unpredictable, but within a safe, precise structure of how far it could go, so it doesn't look too rambling.
Yeah, so Roxy said it looks like it hasn't seen a brush in years. Aisha says Michael should send Boris some 10-second transformation, and Yvonne says he needs a transformation bar.
Do you know what? All good suggestions. I think certainly in his case, without a decent haircut first, it would be a struggle.
Let's stick with modern people. I'm going to do someone else who's very famously in the public eye, Kate Middleton. Would you cut her hair slightly? Or would you leave it?
I think she's clearly someone that has great hair. You can see that. And I know that she manages her hair quite well herself as well. The changes I would make would be subtle. I see sometimes her hair's a little bit heavy on one length where it could be a little bit more layered around the bottom, just to make it easier for her as well, and also be a little bit more flattering. But really I think not a million miles from what she has.
That's the thing. I think she's got beautiful hair, but I do think sometimes it looks like there's a bulk of it.
Yes,
as it were.
Yes. And that's quite down to the haircut.
Okay, we're going to do 2 people, 2 icons from history who are both dead. So the question here is, obviously both of these people have iconic hair.
Yes.
So I suspect you'd say you wouldn't change it, but I'm going to say to you, you have to change it. They're coming into the salon. They're coming to see you and they're saying, Michael, I just don't want to look like I'm stuck in the 50s. Okay. So number 1, Marilyn Monroe.
Oh my God. So how can I change someone that's known for being platinum blonde?
Quite.
In truth, she did have a particular look, but again, if you look closely at her hair, and compare it to the quality of finish that we can get into hair nowadays, it looks, if you look in detail, it actually doesn't look well finished. The sort of setting that they would do in those days, leaves a lot of marking. It looks very crude, let's say,
Yeah.
in places. So, you know, even if she said, look, I want something different, it may be that we could do something different, or we could maybe give her what she has in a much better way.
Better. It's funny you say that, because do you know The Sound of Music? I mean, everyone knows Sound of Music, right?
Yes.
The boys who were in The Sound of Music were not naturally blonde. And the actor who played Friedrich had the same hairdresser who did Marilyn Monroe's hair. And he said she must have suffered because they used to burn his scalp every time and he'd have this raw skin. So poor Marilyn must have been in quite a lot of pain quite a lot of the time.
Yeah, I mean,
Get that blonde.
I don't think she was very dark, but certainly getting that platinum blonde, and also in the 50s when they didn't have the same quality of products, it's hard work. And I know when I used to do Paula Yates's hair, and the first time she came in to the salon, which was in the early 80s, and you know, we had a consultation. Her hair was breaking off in clumps. You know, literally, you touched her hair, you just had half of it was in your hands because of peroxide. And you know, we showed her a way to safely have that colour that she wanted, and she became a client and stayed a client till unfortunately up to her death. But you know, I remember about 10 years after I started doing her hair, she said, "Do you know what? If you told me off about my hair colouring, I'd never have come back."
Really? Interesting.
You know, she didn't want to hear, you know, she was damaging her hair. She just wanted to put right.
But that's something that has emerged from our chats, is that you don't want to change someone's personality or their feelings about their hair. You just want to make it as healthy and as safe as possible, which I think is such a lovely attitude to have towards caring for someone's hair.
And sometimes we will change it, and we do want to change it, because sometimes you know, we feel what someone has isn't appropriate.
I've got one more person from history, but Lizzie Heap has just said, what would you do with Joanna Lumley's hair? I kind of love Joanna Lumley's hair. Would you change Joanna Lumley's hair?
Well, Joanna Lumley, when she was Purdy, we did her hair.
Did you?
In the late 70s, and then also came back to doing her hair when she came back on TV in the 80s.
Right.
But you know, she's a very interesting one, because the Purdy haircut was one of those iconic looks where everyone that came into the salon, and again, we had like mothers, daughters, grandmothers, I want the Purdy look. And it got to the point where stylists were doing 10 Purdys a day. It was really amazing. So in terms of her hair now, I'm not sure exactly. Her hair's longer now, isn't it? So, you know, again, I think probably make it a little bit crisper. You know, keep it long-ish, but maybe not too long. Health is a big thing as well. Make something a little bit crisper, perhaps just on the shoulder, below the shoulder, bob, with a bit of movement going on.
We've got another one coming. Sorry, Michael. I've got my final one, but just quickly, someone said, Mona Lisa, true icon. What would you do differently for my ultimate idol? I never think of Mona Lisa as having a haircut. What's she got? She's got like long brown hair?
Is it a centre parting and long?
Yeah, centre parting, correct.
Well, that would fox me, truly.
I don't think you could have the Mona Lisa with like a fringe or something. I feel like it's got to be pretty classic, right?
Or short, spiky blonde hair.
Yeah,
again,
I mean,
one of those ones. It's too iconic to interfere with.
Too iconic to touch. Again, I'm going to give you my ultimate now, and I'm just saying that this is my most precious human who I worship, Elvis. What would you do to Elvis's hair?
Well, again, Elvis, if you look back on Elvis's hair, he had quite a few different hairstyles, you know, from those early periods right up to, you know, when he was performing in Madison Square Gardens with the big flared shirts and jackets and trousers. And his hair was, you know, got quite long, which I didn't like. And I think most impersonators of Elvis now have his...
They do that.
Has his later rather than his
let's say 50s Elvis, because that, I mean, I know he cut it all off to go in the army when it looked actually great. But if you were dealing with 50s Elvis, so he's got fairly long hair that you could do something with, what would you do with that when he was about 20, 21?
What? Are we saying we're in the 50s now, or Elvis
no? He's coming in
2020
time machine, Back to the Future style. He's come to the modern day, And he goes, help me. And also, yes, Roxy's just said Elvis was naturally blonde, wasn't he? He was a dirty blonde. So would you take him back to blonde, and what would you do?
Well, I think the question's interesting because sometimes people say, what would you do? As if there's only one thing you could do. And yeah, I like to feel that there are so many things that you could do if you'd like to, and to play with. So with his hair, you know, maybe we could try his natural style, a more layered style, you know, a perfected version of what he had. But, you know, I have this with clients sometimes as well that, you know, I've maybe seen for 35 years or something, and they'll say, I've never really changed my hair. And I say, go and look at the photos, because you know, subtly we've adapted and changed all the way through that 35 odd year relationship to completely different looks, but it's been a gradual process at sometimes. It's not been one day they had long black hair and went out with short blonde. But in terms of the look, you know, it does move. You know, we're moving clients towards what we feel is right for now, which is very rarely what was right 5 years ago.
It's funny you say that, because Jay Franklin said, I'd love Michael to sort my hair out and style it. And I was just thinking the same thing that I wanted to say to you. Hey, Michael, what would you do with my hair? But actually, I suppose... I think you should come in. You've got lovely hair. I come in when we're allowed to, and we will see. Okay, we've got one final question, and then I'm going to ask you your final question. So Glenn Stockdale, let's say Glenn Stock has said, when I air dry my hair, it's soft and shiny, but looks bitty down the middle to the end. Would the 10-second transformation help?
Yes, it would, and possibly also the Lifesaver UV, you know, just fed onto the hair as well.
Okay, so that brings me to my final question for you of our 4 weeks. There's only one more.
Okay.
What is your desert island product?
Well, I think for my desert island product, it would be Lifesaver UV, because because that's what I use anyway here, because I think I told you last week my hair's this big if I don't use it. And also because on a desert island, it's an amazing product for UV protection and sun protection. And we've done tests in the Maldives and in the Negev desert in the Middle East, and it's actually astonishing the protection it gives to hair when we do these thorough tests. So that would be my desert island product.
And what would your, maybe not desert island, but if you could magically, everyone who's watching and is going to watch in the future, give them a product to have in their hands, what would it be? What do you think the most universal product is, or where people maybe should start with your range?
Well, I think for everyone's hair, you know, everyone's hair needs treating and hydrating to protect it from thinning. You know, everyone's hair will thin once it leaves the scalp. The hair shaft will thin down, and you know what we know is that nothing works quite like Lifesaver. So that's really for everyone all the time. You know, I will use that too. So that's an iconic product.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with that product. I think it's one of the best things I've ever put on my hair. It makes it like silk, so I love it. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. You've been so patient and so much knowledge, and I've learned so much. And I hope everyone watching has too. It's been an absolute pleasure. All right. Thank you, Michael.
Very, very
have a
much.
lovely evening.
Thank you for everyone checking in.
Yeah.
It's been great.
Bye.
Bye-bye.